Hey, welcome to Android Faithful, where we are your source for the week. We're your source for the weekly. Sorry, my goodness, what's going on this week? Let's try that again. Welcome to Android Faithful. We are your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps in the world of Android, even if sometimes, we don't know where we are and what we're doing.
Do you want to do that again?
Yeah, let's do it again.
Okay, cool. All right.
My bad. I don't know. My brain just went somewhere else.
Hey, listen, 18 episodes. We haven't had to redo an intro, so it's fine. It's
hey,
all right.
Well, congrats to me.
All right,
sorry, everyone.
Let's start it.
Welcome to Android Faithful, your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps in the world of Android. I'm Huyen.
And I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Mishaal Rahman.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Good to see you in another week.
Hey.
Good to be on another week.
Yep.
18, my lucky number.
Yep, and episode number 18, and we're super excited to have a new guest to welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome on, Myriam.
Welcome, Myriam.
Thanks for having me, folks. I'm excited about this one.
Yes, your first appearance on the new Android Faithful after the new podcast. We're welcome. You were kind enough to have me on your podcast a couple weeks ago, so I want to return the favor for sure.
Thanks.
So welcome. And for those who might not know who you are, where are you from, Myriam?
Oh, it's complicated, but I'm mostly in San Francisco and in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm a longtime tech journalist and pundit, and generally very cranky about everything. But I cover mobile and everything around mobile and mobility too, like EVs and stuff. So yeah. Check out my podcast sometime. We'll talk about that later.
We've been podcasting for many, many years together.
I know.
I'm glad.
All about Android, a bunch of other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad to have you on the new show. That's awesome. So
thank you.
Cool. Welcome. Well, before we get into the news, real quickly, want to do a quick update on our Patreon. We wanted to thank everybody who's supporting us over at patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. And we did want to let everyone know that we have a new perk that we've added at the base level, $5 a month, or you can go $10 or $20 a month, no matter what. We're gonna start giving shout outs to you, the patrons. We realize that there's so many of you and you're so awesome. So we wanted to thank each one of you on each episode. So listen in a little bit when we get to the patron news story. Our first shout out will occur. And if you want to get a shout out on the show, you can go to patreon.com/AndroidFaithful. But with that, we can get right into it. And very excited whenever we have numbers to talk about. But the numbers are interesting this time around. Basically, as we look at sales numbers in Q3 2023, comparing them to Q3 2022, we see that Samsung, Google, TCL all had declines in smartphones shipped in the United States year over year. Basically, and Apple was also in there with a modest loss, as they say here on Android Authority. And the really the only people who had wins were Motorola and HMD Global, who shipped more phones during that time. So what do we think of this? I mean, Myriam, you're covering this stuff all the time. Are the newest flagship phones just lasting longer, or is it an effect of inflation and people have less money to spend? Like, what do you think here?
All of this, and if you look at the the brands there, Moto and Nokia or HMD,
yeah,
they make mid-range and budget phones, right? So this is not North America we're looking at there. I think this is
US.
If we're looking at North America, it's basically the prepaid carriers that are making that happen. And if we're not looking at North America, it's Latin America and other markets, right?
Yep.
But here's the thing: you said it's US, so I think it's definitely the prepaid. The thing is this, right? Like, look, most big phone makers now are 4 years of updates, maybe up to 7 years in some cases, and then 5 years of security. This is good. This is good for everyone. But look, the reality is this: I'm lazy. I'm selling a Pixel 6 Pro, yet I have a 7 Pro in my bag and an 8 Pro that I'm about to set up and finally replace my 6 Pro with. Why? Because I don't want to I get a phone a week or so, and I don't have time to change my SIM and everything, all my apps, all my banking, all my Tesla and everything else. So, even I feel like I'm perfectly happy with a 2-year-old phone, right? So the reality is, I think a lot of people are in that boat. And then you're right, inflation, like it's really expensive. Like, we're all super into new phones here, and I don't want anybody to stop, enjoying their new phones. Like I'm loving the Open, for example, but at the same time, it's like it's pretty reasonable to expect for people to keep a phone 2 to 3 years now, especially with these updates, especially since things are kind of not really evolving too much. I think cameras are still really evolving fast, but the rest of it, like every phone has stereo speakers, every phone has a beautiful AMOLED variable, refresh rate display. Well, maybe not the iPhone 15, 60 hertz. But I mean, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that the baseline, like even the battery on my 6 Pro is still holding up after 2 years, and lots of wireless charging that heats up. It's a little slower. It's a little warm. I'm ready to go to the 8 Pro, and I'm about to do it like in the next couple of days before Mediatek Summit is my goal. But the point is, I didn't switch to 7 Pro simply because I didn't have time. I wanted to, but then, here we are a year later and I didn't do it, right? So I used it. I took tons of photos with it. I had it in my bag all the time for all my product photography.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Mishaal, what's your take on this?
I mean, yeah, I definitely think the number one factor is just the economy. Like that's the reason why everything. It's not just phones that are declining in sales. It's also laptops, tablets, and all these other things that were kind of on the upward trend during COVID because everyone had a lot of money to spend and they're staying home and not spending money on travel, on all the other expenses. But now that the economy is kind of in this odd state where some people are doing well, a lot of people are not doing well. So much high inflation. People just are not spending as much money as they used to on things they don't really need, which is upgrading their phone.
Yep.
Is it fair to expect maybe a Q4 bump? I mean, I don't think not much is going to change between now and Christmas. If anything else, it'll make the holiday season harder. But is there usually a bump around Q4?
The challenge with that, I think there is a bump around Q4 with holidays and things like that. But the challenge also with these year-over-year quarterly looks is that you need to account for the release schedules, right? Because what happens is that a new phone comes out and you see a huge surge in people buying to get that new phone and stuff like that, and sometimes those numbers don't get reflected until Q4 if they come out in the fall, and so like Q3 is normally summer. It's a quiet time for phone releases. We've seen Google had a pickup in Q2 this year because of the Pixel Fold because they released the phone in the spring, right? And so it depends on that too. There's all these different kind of variables. Numbers are always fascinating. But speaking of numbers, we have an additional bit of numbers in that I love it when a new entry a new player enters the arena, but the Chinese company Transition, which is the holding company behind brands like Infinix, itel, and phones that we've been talking a lot about here on the show recently, Tecno, right? Remember when we saw those foldables and things like that from Tecno?
Super foldable, yeah.
They've quietly grown and actually in worldwide shipments taken over Vivo, and are becoming a player. And honestly, if you looking at this chart and this from Canalys chart that shows shipments from Q1 2021 to Q3 2023, you see Transition plugging along there at the bottom and then shooting up in Q2 and Q3 2023, being competitive with Oppo, right? Like, which is, not easy, like that's a pretty nice big spike from 5 to close to 10% of the market share. Myriam, do you have have you played with any Transition phones, Tecno
yeah,
phones?
So I've got a whole bunch of Infinix and Tecno phones. They keep sending them to me, and I love them. The software is the only thing that's kind of wonky, right? It's like seeing Chinese phones from 5 years ago. It's kind of the same thing. Like, it's only going to get better, but the hardware is really great. And of course, there's issues with bands in North America because their primary markets are like Africa and Middle East and Eastern Europe and like India and stuff. But look, I think they're getting certainly better. I've been following them for about 3-4 years now, like for a while. And like in the early days, it was like all these mid-range, Helio-based 4G phones, like that. And then they started adding OLED, and they started adding 5G, and they started adding better cameras and OIS and stuff, and wireless charging and crazy. The fastest charging phone in the world is I think a Tecno at 260 watt, right? Like, so my point is they're doing some cool stuff. The software, it's very, you're not going to get updates. You're not going to get, security updates. You're going to get some mistranslations. Think about, what China was like in the early days, basically. And think about even like what Red Magic is like today. That's a brand you can buy here, that's supported here, that makes some great gaming phones. And still, there's always mistranslations. There's always weird stuff in the software. I'm sure Mishaal could go on about this. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used any Transsion phones from any of their sub brands, but yeah, in general, there's a lot of quirks with the software that you got to get used to if you're using something that's from OnePlus, Oppo, or many of the Chinese brands.
I would love to get my hands on one of those Technos,
Me too.
some of that, right? When
Yeah.
both of us were like, "Ooh, these look really cool." So yeah, we'll have to chase those down. But all right. All right, so enough numbers. We got some meat to talk about back in the course, right, right, Michelle?
Yeah, so today is actually the second day of the big Epic v. Google trial, which is, Epic is suing Google over alleged anti-competitive practices, and they're trying to get Google to open up the Play Store for alternative payment processing, also open up Android for alternative app stores to reduce Google's deal making that they've been doing with other OEMs. So this trial, Sean Hollister at The Verge has been doing a great job keeping up with the trial and reporting on it from the actual trial day. And one of the big differences that you should note about this trial versus the Epic v. Apple trial is that the Epic v. Google trial is being decided by a jury, whereas the Epic v. Apple trial was decided by a judge. So we don't know exactly how that'll play out. That could make a significant difference in how it's decided. But again, this is only day 2 of the trial. There hasn't been any outcome yet. But there's been a lot of arguments being flung around on both sides about whether or not Epic is the bad guy or Google is the bad guy. So let's start with a couple of things that Epic has been saying. So Epic has been saying that Google Play Store in the year 2020 accounted for 90% of all app installs on Android devices. And Epic says that even though Google says that Samsung's App Store is installed on 60% of all phones, it still only represents a tiny sliver of the overall app installs from app stores. And Google says this is because users are just choosing not to use Samsung's Galaxy Store, and that this is proof that there are alternatives to the Google Play Store on Android devices, but just users choosing to use our store over others. Epic is also arguing that Google makes it way too difficult to sideload apps. They showed off this screen where they had the 16-step process to sideload an app. And I do want to note, though, that a lot of these steps are kind of self-inflicted because Epic is first asking you to install the Epic Game Store app, and then that is asking you to sideload the Fortnite app. And then also they showed off one screen where you have to grant a bunch of permissions to Fortnite before you can install it. And that's also the fault of Epic because that's only because they're targeting an older Android version. So it kind of feels like they're inflating the number of steps required to sideload an app. I mean, it is true. You do have to go through a bunch of permissions.
Of course they are. It behooves. I mean, much like the Google antitrust case that's happening right now, where the prosecution, where the other side is trying to show how hard it is to change your default search engine on phones. Right? They're gonna make it show the path of most resistance to prove the point. Right? So
absolutely. So a couple other things they brought up. They brought up this Project Hug, in which Google allegedly made deals with multiple game developers to secure them from leaving Google Play. This supposedly involved deal making, like offering incentives or potentially financial incentives to several top game makers like Activision Blizzard or Riot Games. And the allegation is that Google was scared of a contagion effect of top game developers leaving the market, although it's debatable whether or not how serious some of them actually were in going through with this. And then finally, Epic argued that Google's anti-steering provision is anti-competitive. The anti-steering being that Google basically says if you're distributing your app on Google Play, you can't mention or link to alternative payment processes, alternative payment methods on your website or like in emails and things like that. And this is actually this is the only thing that Epic won when they sued Apple on. The judge in that case ruled that Apple's anti-steering provision was struck down. But although that decision is being put on hold. So whether or not Epic actually has a chance of winning this case is kind of up in the air because they lost most of what they sued Apple over, and their case against Google is even shakier considering Google does allow you to sideload apps. There are alternative app stores available on Android, And of course, Google had some of its own arguments to share. They argue that sideloading is for security because a lot of malware is distributed via sideloading. They argue that their anti-fragmentation agreement is necessary because if you allow OEMs to fork Android and make whatever modifications they want, then there's no guarantee that developers who are making apps can have their apps run the same on all Android devices. They also argued that their revenue sharing fee is a market fee and not a monopoly fee, and that other payment providers other platforms like Nintendo, Xbox, Steam, etc. charge the same, and that they're not like PayPal or Stripe because they do more than just process payments. They also help the users discover apps, spend money on them, and deliver the downloads. They also provide tools, assistance to users, and all these other things. So they're basically saying this 30% is justifiable because you're getting more than just payment processing. And also, most developers don't even pay 30% because most developers earn under $1 million in revenue, and for those developers, they only have to pay 15%. And then there was a lot of other arguments that Google was making in their defense, against Epic. And
I will say, I want to add in, because we're looking at here on our video viewers, we see Google's like closest to official statement about this, kind of where their VP of Government Affairs and Public Policy, has a whole piece about maintaining choice and opportunity on Android, Google Play, and they outline all those bullet points, Mishaal, that you mentioned. But of course, they end with, this lawsuit risks making Android less safe. Right, which I feel like is always their defense of anything that's questioning what they're doing, because and maybe they're right. I mean, like they're if they're elevating the users and the safety of the platform above all, but at what cost and how far is too far and all that sort of stuff. That a lot of interesting questions, right? So.
Yeah. The question is all like there's a lot of question about intent and intentions, because Epic is really trying to hammer in that Google is saying this in public, but in private, they have all these communications that are being hidden or censored, and whether or not that will actually fly, whether or not that actually makes a difference. And to the end user, it is good for the user to go through one single payment provider and one single app store. A lot of users like you see the same thing with the Apple side. A lot of users actually like having to go through the app store and having that payment provider as a single, Apple payments and everything. A lot of users like having that option, just having to do that. And we'll have to see whether or not the jury agrees with Epic or Google in this case. Although it seems like, based on their failure in the Apple case, they probably have a tough uphill battle to climb.
Right, but at the same time, you've got an antitrust case happening that I got to imagine juries are aware of, or at least it's hard to find a jury that isn't. I don't know. It's just an interesting time for these lawsuits for Google. I don't know where. We'll see. We're 2 days in, right? So we have no idea how it's going to go or whatnot. But it's a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
When?
We'll see. I have to admit, I rolled my eyes a little bit reading the official statement a little bit. Just rolled my eyes a little bit. But I mean, I guess we'll see. We'll see. Sorry. It's a lot. It's just really interesting to have 2 weeks in a row having all of these cases kind of come to bear and having to kind of seeing on how many different fronts Google can say, no, really, we're not evil, we swear, and I guess, again, it's interesting. I did roll my eyes a little bit, all due respect. That's kind of opposite to what I'm saying, but I had not great feelings reading that statement, but we'll see.
Myriam, you lit up when said she rolled her eyes.
I mean, the whole thing is just a load of BS, I mean, I understand, okay, look, Google is evil. We know that. I mean, they're not, nobody is really. I don't think Epic is much better, honestly.
I think the use of the word evil is subjective, because I think Google is.
We're talking about businesses that want.
I know Epic Games, right?
I'm not saying like evil per se. I'm just saying it's capitalism, guys. Okay?
Exactly.
Yes, 100%.
And that's why it's a non-issue. Like, I'm actually rooting for the user, and the average user doesn't want to deal with side loading. I'm sorry, okay?
True.
I'll do it. You all will do it. But like the people listening here are all going to do it, but should the average person do that? The friction's insane. And the whole, I get it, Apple's making a cut, Google's making a cut, all this, but that's why they're upset, Epic, because they don't want to pay the cut. Well, guess what? You know what? That's a tax. That's a tax. Yep. The tax of doing business with the big boys. Okay. You're not the big boy, Epic, right, compared to those guys.
Right.
And I don't know. I look, whatever gets comes out of this, I don't think it's gonna, as long as it benefits the end user, I'm happy. That's all. And right now on Google doesn't matter anyway. I mean, I hope they don't take it out of the Play Store because that would be stupid. But I'm hoping that, for Apple, it's a big deal because I'm more worried about the EU coming along and saying you have to let people sideload on iOS.
Yep.
And then what? And then what kind of disaster do we get after that? Because, who are the hackers going to target? Not the Android users.
Right. That's
Yeah,
true.
I think just having this starting out with a singular, everyone has access to this singular app store is really good for the user. Because if you see this alternative situation, like when Microsoft tried, and they're still trying to get people to use the Windows App Store, but very few popular apps are actually distributed and you download it through the Microsoft App Store. So you see now everyone's just downloading executables from the internet, from different websites, and occasionally getting tricked into installing the wrong executable from the wrong website. And so, it is better for the user, for the average user, to have access to this one app store that they can get all their apps from.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll be monitoring it. We'll see how it goes. We wish everyone luck in the trial. I don't know. The
I feel
jury.
bad for the jury, honestly.
Yeah, the jury. I mean,
That's a lot of
that's
it.
the big
Imagine
challenge
having
is
to deal with
that,
that?
that the lawyer's job now is to simplify this and make a jury understand exactly what's happening in very technical, very economic, very like all this sort of stuff. It's. I mean, it would be amazing. It would be fascinating to be a jury on that trial, but it would be exhausting. So,
Well, I'm sorry, but we've got a little more corporate tea before we do some more fun stuff, and I pushed for this. And talking about the kind of difference between the front that a company puts and then their actual business directions. So it came out in a November 1st article in Bloomberg that Apple had actually pretty much come very close to completing an Apple Watch compatibility with Android. This was called Project Fennel. And the article itself was basically about Apple's healthcare mission, which, I'm not an Apple Watch user, but I know many, many very happy ones. And healthcare, life quality is a big issue, a big kind of driver right now in like the mobile space. And so of course, Apple's kind of in this article talking about all their big ideas. And it's just kind of funny that, like they Project Fennel, this project to make the Apple Watch compatible with Android, was basically about bringing their, health device to places where they have very little market share. But guess what? They killed it because according to the source that spoke to Mark Gurman and Drake Bennett for this Bloomberg article, quote, if you gave up the watch to Android, you dilute the value of the watch to the iPhone. And basically the iPhone just drives, the opposite. The Apple Watch drives iPhone sales. And I included this. I really pushed for this because number one, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's so funny because right now in Android, we're still kind of trying to find all the manufacturers and OEMs are trying to find their Apple Watch moment, their one thing that will just cement wearables in the Android space, and they just can't keep up with Apple Watch. And I personally know many really good, passionate Android devs who are using iPhones, quote, because of the watch. Literally every single one of my friends that are an iOS user and an Android dev said because of the watch. So I just think this is interesting. And, I just think it's also funny that they're all in on this like health mission, but for the business, we'll just keep the Apple Watch to themselves. So anyway, I just want to include it to mention it because I think it's funny, and no hate to my Android fam that use it because of watch. I get it. We're still working on it over here.
Myriam, what do you think of the Apple Watch?
I love it. I think it's the best wearable.
Yeah.
I worked for Pebble, and I think it's the best wearable, and I don't have one because I'm an Android user.
Yep.
It's smart to keep it to itself. Yeah.
Would I want one? If anything, I'd love an Apple Watch Ultra. I really love how I like big watches. Right now, I've got a Galaxy Watch 6 Classic, the one with the rotating bezel. And it's about the right size for my wrist. That's why I wear it. And also, it's probably one of the best along with the Pixel Watch 2 and, the Apple Watch. I think there was a time, and there is a time in a way today where, you can install Apple Music on an Android phone. Yep. So, why is that? Like, that's weird to me, right? Like, honestly, it really is weird to me because, like,
where's the line?
Music is a universal thing. If you have potentially, arguably, the best music service, I'm a YouTube Music user, but every time I use Apple Music, it's a really great experience. The UI is way better, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at Apple Music versus even Spotify, like I think could be considered the leader. And at the same time, it's available on Android. So it's weird to me that they're like making some exceptions, but not all. They stopped making iTunes or whatever. I guess it's called Music on the Mac now. I'm sitting in front of a Mac. You'd think I would know. They did iTunes for Windows for a while. For me, that was a gateway drug to getting an iPod, actually, right? In 2001, 100%. Back in the day. But look, in an ideal world, yes, I want that. In an ideal world, I also want iMessages for Android. In an ideal world, I want Apple to adopt RCS. In an ideal world, there are many things I want. I want a unicorn. I want a dinosaur. Yay! But look, the reality is this: we all have an iPhone. I mean, maybe not all of you here, but a lot of people here, I bet, have an iPhone. I keep an iPhone around. I just bought a 15 Pro Max because I was on an 11. And that's how long, 4 years on an iPhone. And I only use it for video recording. And I wanted to play with the camera. And because I live in Canada part-time, I could get one of the SIM tray. Oh, yeah. So I got one. And, I always have one to try stuff out. And also I'm a Mac user, so it's nice to have the integration. Will it be my daily driver? Never. But I could buy an Apple Watch if I carry the iPhone around all the time, but I would rather carry 2 Android phones, honestly. Right. So I don't think I'm going to buy one, but it's definitely something. I get why they didn't do it in the end. This is a major kind of like, fly trap for Apple, right?
Yep. It's definitely, I mean, it's the line of where they will play nice and won't play nice. And again, going back to Google and being evil and that, it's all driven by shareholder value and capitalism and all that.
Hey, don't worry, Apple is evil too. Everybody's evil.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, I mean, last week we were talking about the billions of dollar deals that they have between Apple and Google for the default search. But then here they're like, we're not friends, but over here we're kind of buddies. And then, but we want our own like proprietary app stores. And it's very funny.
Yep. For sure.
These are big companies with many different teams and divisions working on them.
Left hand, right hand.
Potentially different priorities,
Yep. So, all right, cool. Well, that's going to wrap up the news, but we've got one more news story to talk about. The aforementioned that we mentioned at the top of the show. Every week, our patrons over on Patreon, patreon.com/AndroidFaithful, can vote for a story for us to talk about each week. And I was laughing all day as I was watching the votes come in because I'll do it from bottom up. The lowest vote getter was the Samsung S24 targets Apple with AI. That got 16% of the vote. Second, with 33% of the vote, was Pixel 8 users reporting poor battery life. But the number one story this week with 51% of the vote is all about how the Pixel weather app is driven by AI, with an in-depth report on MetNet 3 that powers Google's 12-hour forecast in the new Pixel weather app. And I gotta tell you, I love the Android community, especially our Android community's interest in the weather app. Whenever weather comes up, it's the winner. Weather's where it's at. But if you're interested in this, 9to5 Google has a great breakdown of where Google broke down and introduced to the world through their research blog MetNet 3, which is the state-of-the-art neural weather model that they're using in Google's weather products, and that is what is driving the when it's going to rain, the forecasting, all the stuff in the new app, and it's all driven by machine learning and AI. Right, that's the whole thing. It says, some data sources such as weather observations and radar have characteristics similar to a continuous stream of data, while others such as NWP assimilations are similar to batches of data. The system is able to align all of these data sources spatially and temporally, allowing the model to create an updated understanding for the next 12 hours of precipitation at a very high cadence. So this functionality in Nowcast is available in the US as well as 27 countries in Europe. And basically Google is very hyped on MetNet 3. They say it has the potential to create new possibilities for weather forecasting and to improve the safety and efficiency of many activities such as transportation, agriculture, and energy production. So if you were curious at how Google knows it's going to rain, it's MetNet 3. That's for sure. Which is just too funny. But I don't know. I like the new weather app. I don't know if you guys had a chance to play with it or not. I think it's great. I love the Nowcast feature. So
yeah, I've seen it a few times, and So do we need to add? Is weather widgets on our Android faithful drinking game because I think it is.
I think just weather apps in
Weather
general.
apps is
yeah,
weather.
apps, weather widgets, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So
Nice.
but,
Speaking of apps, it's not even technically an app. It's still built into the Google
Yeah.
app, and you
Yes.
still have to like search for weather, then add it as a home screen shortcut. I still don't know why Google hasn't released an app on Google Play that's just a shortcut to it, like they did with Podcasts and Assistant and Lens. Like I would really like for them to add that so people can just search for weather and get it right there and just open it all the time. Yeah,
I will say, while we're complaining, I have been very frustrated with with Android 14 because they've combined it up here in the little top widget your calendar and weather, and the tap space to get to weather is micro, right? I end up on the calendar app more often than the weather, right?
And that's actually against material design guidelines, by the way.
Yep.
You need 48 density independent pixels for each touch target. So I don't know. Somebody file a ticket somewhere.
Have you considered it's just a single touch target and AI is deciding whether you should be in your calendar?
Yeah, whether I should be in my calendar. Yeah.
What will irritate my user most right
point.
now?
The AI definitely knows better, especially when it comes to weather. But excellent. So that was the patron pick, and we want to give a shout out to Bob Coburn, who has been a loyal listener for the past 4 months, and we want to thank Bob for his support.
Bob.
So thank you, Bob. You're the best. Thanks for supporting Android Faithful. And with that, we're going to get into some hardware because we got a lot of hardware to talk about. And first up is we've been very bullish on the OnePlus Open, right? OnePlus Open is very cool. But it was revealed last week that the whole OpenCanvas system, the multitasking system, OnePlus is promising that it's going to come to the OnePlus Pad. So those of us who've been using the OnePlus Open and the OpenCanvas system for multitasking, if you're planning on getting the OnePlus Pad, you will also be able to use OpenCanvas, which is great news and also not surprising because if they've come up with this should be the way multitasking is handled on OnePlus devices, it makes sense for them to bring it to the tablet. But they did a AMA on Reddit where they confirmed that they are working on bringing OpenCanvas to the OnePlus Pad. So no word on when that's going to happen, but it was confirmed on their side. So Myriam, both Mishaal and I had the pleasure of seeing you at the OnePlus event in New York a couple of weeks ago.
I was mad. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's been a couple of weeks. Embargoes are lifted. Very curious what you think of the OnePlus Open. I know you reviewed it on your podcast recently.
Yeah, and also my review on Hot Hardware. If you want to go to hothardware.com, you can watch the video there and the actual 3,000 word review, guys. Because, I had words to say. Look, I love it. I love it. And I was mad because of the lack of wireless charging. I'm still mad because of the lack of wireless charging, but I've been able to excuse it because this phone is so good. I think it's definitely up there in my top 5 of 2023. And it's, for me, opened the floodgates to I want a book-style folding phone in my life. It's the first one. Yep. And I tell you what, I've got them all. That's a big step. I've got the Pixel Fold. I've got the Z Fold 5. I've had the previous Z Folds. I've had some of the Chinese ones. And this is it. This is sticking like glue for me. And that's a tall order for a OnePlus phone. I mean, I love me a OnePlus. I'm an underdog lover. You know that. And I've always been a big fan of OnePlus. But I've only really driven a OnePlus 8 Pro once before because it was the first with wireless charging and I need my wireless charging, but this one's coming very close. I definitely have it as a second phone in my pocket all the time, and I'm using it as a way to be more productive, especially on airplanes and stuff. I travel so much, and I'm a big person, and yes, I get upgraded a lot because I got status and stuff, so I travel business a lot, but sometimes I'm stuck in economy still, and even my 13-inch MacBook Air is just not going to cut it on that tray table. And I don't want to carry an extra tablet and then have to worry about, is it charged? Do I have my content on there? No. I just pull out the Open and I'm happy as a clam. So I think it's the multitasking that does it for me. I think it's also the fact that the display has a bit of an anti-glare coating. I think it's the form factor when shut. It just feels like a small flagship. I think the camera is the first OnePlus camera where I feel like I'm not losing out. Like, and it's come close a few times, but it's really good. It's up there. Like, it's not quite Pixel 8 Pro. It's not quite, Galaxy S23 Ultra. It's not quite iPhone 15 Pro Max, but it's damn close. Yeah. And you can't say that about Moto, for example, right? And they're the only other kind of player we have other than Google, Samsung, Apple, and OnePlus in this part of the world, unfortunately. Now, there are a lot of Chinese folding phones that I love, and I've used. Some of them are super thin and light, like the Magic V2 from Honor. And Xiaomi makes some good stuff. Oppo, of course. They're essentially, this is an Oppo, right? This is the Oppo Find N3, and it's in the case, guys, because I don't trust myself enough. But here's the thing, right? Like, I think they nailed it, and I think that it's a small price for not have wireless charging. If you look at how thick the camera pod is, it's kind of like, where do you put it to charge it wirelessly? Like, maybe on a charger that's like this, and you put the phone down like that, that might work. Like if the coil's down there. I definitely want them to resolve this somehow in the next generation. But right now, I think that, if you're looking for a folding phone and you want something a little different, the Pixel Fold is great, but it's G2. G2 sucks. And it's heavy, really heavy. And I love the Passport form factor, though, and the cameras are great. But then there's Pixel. I've never liked the folds from Galaxy, from Samsung. I like that tall and skinny and thick and unwieldy. I just want to throw them against the wall every time I have one in my hand. It's like, get out of here.
We talked a lot about how the Samsung Fold and the Pixel Fold were like too small, too fat, and like the OnePlus Open feels just right in terms of the size.
I know.
It's like an aspect ratio slider, and the fold is on this side, and the Pixel Fold, and then OnePlus just like zip right in the middle.
Yep.
So.
And then the software doesn't suck. It's all speedy. You got a great chipset there. You can't go wrong with that. Lots of storage and RAM too. Like no skimping. I don't understand. Like, look, I love me some reviews out there that are critical. And, I've seen some critical OnePlus Open reviews. I'm not going to name names, but, big publications. Yep. And, from writers that I trust and like and am friends with. And I'm like, what kind of pill did you have before you wrote this review? Because I'm like, you look at the fact that this is essentially a $14.99 phone, like all day. As we were joking around at the event, you can light a phone on fire and send it in and get $200, okay? Yeah. So, like, you're going to get your $200 off. And on top of that, you're getting, 16 gigs and 512 gigs, storage and RAM. And you're getting, basically a really great phone all around. It's like, how is that not a good thing? Yep. Like, I don't know. I want to encourage people to buy something else than a Samsung or an iPhone. So there you go. That's your solution right there.
Yep. All right.
I could go on.
Cool. Well, speaking of Samsung, we got some insight into them, right, Wen?
Yeah, we do actually. So we kind of had a very interesting up and down few years with Exynos and Snapdragon. So of course, in the Samsung S22 series, as many Android faithful are familiar, Samsung would split processor duties between their in-house Exynos chips and the Snapdragon or the Qualcomm Snapdragons. The last time that happened was the S22 with their in-house Exynos 2200 chips and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 being in your S22, depending on your region. Like us folks in the Americas had, I think we had the Snapdragon, and mostly Europe and parts of Asia and Africa got the Exynos. Sorry, I had this problem last time we talked about Exynos a lot. But as
Sean Connery,
Sean Connery, like Snapdragon and Exynos. Okay, anyway, but as many Android faithful are aware, Samsung kind of flipped the table a little bit on their Exynos line and basically tanked or kind of nuked the 2300 after reports of overheating in the Exynos 2200s and focused instead on the 2400s. And that meant that the S23 series was all Snapdragon all the time. And I think we kind of wondered out loud whether this might be a perma thing, whether they're just going to go ahead and ride on Snapdragon's recent successes. But guess what? No. Unsurprisingly, they were working on that 2400, and for the S24 series, it wasn't a proper announcement, but it was more just the Qualcomm CEO Cristiano Amon saying, yes, we expect to have the majority share of the S24 processors, which again implies that they don't got it all, which implies that Samsung will in fact be coming back with the Exynos 2400, which has a lot of AI in it. There's your drink. And it will, depending on what market you're in, and actually what model of S24 you're buying, at least as rumors go for now, you'll be getting either your Exynos or your Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. So far the rumors are S24 and S24 Plus will have the Exynos outside of North America. All of North America will have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and the S24 Ultra will indeed be all Snapdragon all the time. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out for Exynos, but there you go. I actually couldn't stop doing it after it started happening.
You're on a roll.
It just you wouldn't stop. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's freaking amazing.
Well,
Thanks.
Myriam, go after you, Mishaal.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Myriam, Mishaal, how much does this matter to the average user? What's
Doesn't,
inside?
but it does because the Exynos gets hot and has crappy 5G reception. So, I mean, it doesn't. Look, I don't know. I think here's the thing. I think it's a yield thing, and maybe Mishaal can confirm this. 4 nanometer, right? Or is it 3? Where are we at with the Snapdragon? It's
I think they're at 4.
That's 4. Okay, so maybe not a yield issue, but I'm thinking if TSMC is making all these chips for everyone, and they're also busy making chips for Apple, right? The 3 nanometer chips, the M3 and stuff. Like their foundries are like cranked up to 11, and so maybe Samsung's predicted that they're going to sell more of the S24 because they keep hoping that the flagships are going to sell, and we know that's not going to happen. But and so they're like, okay, we need some Exynos. So how do we make this palatable? And making it palatable means that some markets are, aside from the Ultra, are getting the Exynos, and I can see that. But it's going to be a disappointment for those of you who have it. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yep.
If it was Dimensity 9300, I'd be fine.
All right. Well, this is a good segue into the
segue.
Mediatek news, right?
Yeah, I hope y'all aren't actually doing drink every time someone says AI, because if you are, then you're going to be drinking a lot.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
So Mediatek announced the Dimensity 9300 earlier today, or was it yesterday? My time is a blur right now. And while they did talk a lot about generative AI, just like Qualcomm did with the Snapdragon 8.3, the most surprising thing is actually with the new CPU setup in this chipset. So the Dimensity 9300 has a 4+4 CPU setup. So they have 4 Cortex X4 cores and 4 Cortex A720 cores. And this is a bit unusual because there aren't any of those usual lower performance, power efficient Cortex A500 series cores. And for reference, the Dimensity 9200, which is a previous generation chipset, had 4 A510 cores, and this generation's Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 has 2 A20 cores. So does this mean that the new Dimensity 9300 will suck up more power and just be less power efficient in general? Not necessarily. And it's true that the A500 series cores do use less power at their lower frequencies, but they actually consume more power when they're running at their highest frequencies versus the A720 cores when those are running at their lower frequencies. And given that the 700 series cores tend to perform better overall, it's actually more beneficial to offload less demanding tasks to those cores, have them be completed more quickly compared to if they were offloaded to the A500 series cores, and then have the A700 series cores race to idle. So in general, like in CPU and power consumption, the faster you can quickly complete your task and have the CPU cores enter an idle state and spend more time in that idle state, the more power you can save. So that's basically the philosophy behind why you have these this all big core setup. As for why, we haven't really seen this done before with other Android flagship chipsets. It's mostly just because of a combination of factors that make it more viable now. Like ARM CPU designs, they've been steadily improving the performance per watt of their 700 CPU designs, and then there's also improved fabrication nodes with the TSMC now having their third generation 4 nanometer chips. So that's the most surprising thing about this chipset is a CPU. And there's also, of course, as I mentioned, generative AI improvements. The Dimensity 9300 is an upgraded APU that's 45% reduction in power consumption. They can run 7 billion parameter large language model at 20 tokens per second, which is fast enough for real-time use. And MediaTek even said something surprising. If you pair this chip with 24 gigabytes of RAM, which actually exists in some smartphones, you could run a 33 billion parameter large language model at a slower 3 to 4 token per second rate. Then there's also other improvements like the GPU upgraded with a 12-core Immortalis G720. This actually runs at up to a staggering 1300 megahertz. Then there's also, the year-on-year performance improvements and power consumption reduction. Then there's also other stuff like Ultra HDR image capture, support for ARM's memory tagging extension, dedicated OIS sensor core, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And this chipset, because it's a Mediatek chipset, we probably won't see it in any devices that are shipping in the US, any flagship devices anytime soon. We'll probably see devices launching in China, followed by a global launch in Europe sometime throughout 2024.
Yeah, I've got a phone here with 24 gigs of RAM. It is the Realme GT5. And it is China only right now. 240 watt charging. It's the successor to GT3 they launched at MWC. But it's got 24 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. Like, okay. But going back to what you were saying, I think it's interesting that they basically a big design instead of a big little design. And the best analogy I can make for listeners that are maybe not as tech savvy as Mishaal is that when 5G we were told it was going to be more efficient. If you're an IoT user, like if you are a farmer that has a sensor out in the field that's connected to a 5G to gather temperature or humidity or wind speed or whatever, it's not a lot of data, right? 5G seems like overkill. Why not use 3G or 4G? I mean, obviously those networks are disappearing, but say you have a 4G radio in there, like, wouldn't that be enough? Well, it turns out that 5G, you kind of pull up your data because you don't necessarily need that data in real time, and then you send it out in bursts really fast because it's 5G, and the efficiency on that sensor out in the field is infinitely better. So you get better, essentially, battery life, or if it's solar powered, less use of energy for that sensor out there. And I think this is the equivalent type of thing, And if you want to get more nerdy, you could call this basically pulse width modulating the big cores, right? You're just sending bursts of tasks instead of like a continuous steady flow of efficiency core work, right? And I can see that being more efficient, especially because, as Mishaal said, we're gotten to a point where the big cores are actually very power efficient. So maybe this is a good approach. I think it's very interesting. And, we discussed this before the podcast started. I think Apple's doing the same thing with M3, right? Or A17 Pro, maybe even, Mishaal?
I don't know if we know exactly what their efficiency cores
assuming,
entail,
right?
but we know their M3 series is all big cores, and also
Right.
Snapdragon X Elite, all big cores. So yeah, this is
so there
definitely
you
an
go.
approach that is not, it's unusual in the Android space, in the Android chipset space, but it's not unheard of.
Right. Cool. We'll definitely keep an eye on it and see how it all develops, right? So, excellent. All right, so we got one last story here in hardware. Mishaal, I know you're on the edge of your seat to talk about this one, eh?
So speaking of unusual things, Lenovo this week announced a collaboration with 3 fashion designers for a proof of concept Lenovo Tab Wear collection. So this collection features designs that find ways to incorporate Lenovo's tablets. And audio listeners, you really have to go on Android Authority's website and look at this article, because I'm trying to keep a straight face now as I talk about this, because the designs are just absurd.
It's like a
They
kangaroo
basically
pouch for
have
your
these
tablet.
these fashion design, these jackets and these clothes to where you can put a giant tablet in it. And I'm just reading this and I'm like, this is an argument for why we need book style foldables. Like, nobody wants to carry around a tablet and have pockets big enough to carry around a 10-inch tablet. Like, why not just carry around a foldable as small as the OnePlus Open that can unfold into the tablet? I'm like, why does this exist?
In
Who's gonna wear this?
Lenovo's defense, right? Fashion designers often push the limits, right? Like the whole idea of this or these experimental prototype, all this sort of stuff. They're not meant to be that practical, right? So you've got 3 fashion groups, one based in London, which did a normal looking kind of jacket hoodie thing with a big slot to put the tablet in front, as well as like these straps that go around your neck that come down in front of you for you to pull the tablet out in front of you and be able to use it while attached to you, whatever.
Like your own airline tray, but attached to your neck. It's
Exactly.
really interesting.
Then there was a Hong Kong-based designer that as Android Authority explained here, went the cyberpunk route, which probably explains to you what it looks. It looks like out of anime, right? Like kind of like these weird kind of like kind of outfits that they would just that they would slide the tablet into. But the one that has gotten the most length of here, of course, is from an Amsterdam-based designer that created this pink jacket that also it has a pouch for the tablet, but also can inflate and turn into a hammock.
I was going to say, it looks like a deflated airbag.
It literally is a deflated airbag because it can inflate and turn into a hammock that you can then use your tablet while laying on. It's very, very funny. Lenovo has a whole website called lenovotabwear.com where you can go look at these in more detail and check them all out. And it's, they're trying something, and they're trying to give legitimacy to tablets, which, hey, I love tablets. I love foldables, but I also love tablets. I like seeing something new in the space, I guess, right?
I mean,
we'd be making...
Go ahead, Mishaal, please.
I'm just saying, I think we'd be making fun of this less if they came out with this, like, years before book-style foldables and rollable concepts, like, entered the tech mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean the Dutch one from was it the Amsterdam? Yeah. It's not just inflatable. It has this kind of quilted bubble wrapness about it, which, by the way, means that you won't have to use a case or any protectors on your tablet. So hey, that might actually be the solution for people like Ron that don't want to muddy the beautiful industrial design of his phone with a case. You just have to put the protection on your clothing, Ron, and then you're good when you go out running.
It looks really quite comfy, actually.
I love the description. The description is a transforming all-season hammock to create your me time cocoon anywhere.
Oh goodness!
Disguised in an inflatable poncho.
It looks like a chamois or whatever that thing was.
I mean, it's
very absorbent.
It definitely is. It's borderline SNL sketch, right?
I just feel like we're not cool enough for this, guys.
Yeah.
If you're in the chat right now and you're cool enough, please let us know.
Yeah, seriously, the inflatable poncho to hammock is something I never thought I'd ever see. So, me time cocoon is just
excellent.
Just sums it all up. So that's a good one. Wow. So is that the future of tabletware? I don't know.
Who knows?
All right. Well, we got a little more practical stuff to talk about in the world of apps, right? Right, Wynn?
Yeah. And so we talked about this a little bit, but Messages for Web is starting to roll out that new QR codeless pairing of your web and sometimes tablet devices to your messages on your Android phone. I actually tried this afternoon, and yeah, it's still technically in beta. So if you're like me, I actually signed out of my messages unpairing. I'm willing to unpair for the Android faithful. That's like the amount of love I have for y'all that I'll unpair. So basically what happened is when I unpaired, I went to the web. You can still see the old QR code, but there is now a banner underneath that says, hey, beta, you can sign in without a QR code. And it basically takes you to another screen where you confirm, logging in with your Google account. And basically once you do that and you open up the Google Messages app on your phone, it kind of automatically just communicates. And then it shows you 3 emojis in a bottom sheet coming up on your Android device that you need to basically tap the matching emoji from your, to be paired browser window on your phone. And it was easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's like longer to say it than it was to do it. Basically log in with your Google account, tap the matching emojis, and go off into the sunset with your Google Messages pairing on the web and tablets.
I always knew that emojis would come in handy for authentication.
Saving the world and people's security. So,
Clever uses of emoji. Myriam, I'm curious, what SMS app or messaging app do you use? Are you using Messages?
I use Google Messages, yeah. I even install it on these Chinese phones that I get. Like this, talking of Dimensity 9200, this is the Xiaomi 13T Pro. It's a branded, it's like an affordable flagship. It's like the 10T or the 11. Well, there's no 11T.
We talked about it on.
Yeah, you know the one.
Week,
anyway, I'm it's completely it came out early October and then they launched the Xiaomi 14 late October. What gives, Xiaomi? I haven't had time to review this yet. God damn it. Anyway, I have it on there and I put it on my phone messages. I don't know. I just like it. I just like because it works on the web. I like it because it supports RCS flawlessly. I like it because it's just great. It's just nice.
It's funny how 5 years ago SMS apps was like a legitimate
thing.
Textra, like all this sort of stuff. And I've just been on messages, and it's doing the job.
I have a request if anybody from Google is listening. Is there any way we could kind of like pin and lock which account you're using as your default? Because it's often this is actually a general thing in Android. I've got 3 accounts going, and like you sometimes accidentally swipe down and you change accounts. Like in Google Maps, you change accounts, all of a sudden you realize your entire search history is gone because it hasn't followed you to your main account or whatever you wanted to use, right? So I'd love to pin, like Gmail is one that I don't want to pin because I check email on multiple accounts. But for things like Maps or things like Messages, wouldn't it be great to kind of say, because this is the priority account, unless I jump through a bunch of hoops to change it, do not let me change it.
Yeah.
If we're making requests, Google, can you bring back the organization feature, the tab?
Yes.
Oh,
thank you. Oh my God, I don't know why they got rid of that. I'm waiting for the next chapter of that story because hopefully it's worthwhile something. But this is a great segue to the next story, actually, Mishaal. Right? So.
Yeah. So for those of you who use Google for maintaining a shopping list, you may have known that there's been multiple ways over the years to do it. There's Google Keep. There's also the Google Assistant Notes, and there's also the Google Shopping List. And the last two the Assistant Notes and Shopping List, are being phased away in favor of Google Keep, which is kind of like going full circle because they launched Assistant Notes and Shopping List. Then they also announced like third-party integrations for shopping list creation through Assistant. Then they got rid of the third-party Assistant creation, and now we're back on Google Keep for everything, which kind of makes sense. This is I think how it should have been done from the get-go. Instead of having this built-in shopping list web interface you access through Google Assistant, and then you can only really interact with through voice. And then like the way to actually access the shopping list item within the Google app was like a convoluted tap of steps, like multiple taps to get to it. And so like I think this should have been done a long time ago, just having Google Keep handle all your notes and lists, because that's literally what it's designed for. It's an app for your lists.
Yeah. And it's also Google, what goes around comes around. Right? Like,
time is a flat circle.
How often do we see that?
Yeah. And at least in this case, a shopping list is such a simple thing that like
simple function.
It's so simple. Yep. It's such a simple function, right? That the transfer migration process is basically seamless. And like you'll get a notification on your phone telling you that you should migrate from this one from your old system to the new Google Keep system. So hopefully, this shouldn't upset many people, because I mean it's just a shopping list, right? Like what kind of complex things are you doing with a shopping list?
Well,
watch somebody have an edge use case.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Let's see what users come up with. That's for sure.
Oh boy.
All right,
I use Google Keep and I love it. And, and the only challenge is my spouse and I share some notes, and they don't want to use the Keep interface. They don't want to go to keep.google.com. So they use it in the calendar next to, or email next to their, like as a sidebar, and they don't get all the functionality. So we're always fighting. I'm like, come on, just use the Keep website or use the Keep app on your phone. And they're like, no, I don't want to. This is nicely integrated in my email or whatever calendar. Yeah. It's just so funny because Google has so many ways of doing the same things, right? And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yep. And they're just slowly trying to find the right path, and then in a couple of years bring it back to the one that they changed from, and then bring it back. Or it's a carousel. That's
I'm waiting for tasks now to pick up some kind of shopping list or to-do list functionality. And actually the other day, I swear, either I was drunk or sleep app using, smartphone using, I swear the tasks widget just appeared on a home screen on my phone, and I never used it before. So anyway, I think that's maybe that's how they're going to just start. Maybe do you think
it was always there? You never noticed it. It was always there. Yeah.
Or there's a turf war internally, and they're just trying to figure out who's going to win the get shit done war at Google Keep or tasks. I don't know.
It's like reminders, right? You can set reminders when you talk to the assistant, and then they don't appear anywhere. Well, I mean, they do, I think, in maybe somewhere, but they don't appear where I want them to appear, which is my calendar. Right. Like if I want to set a reminder, give me a calendar entry for it. Make it a special color so I know it's a reminder or something. Like that's what I need. Not like some hypothetical thing where I don't get a notification and I forget the reminder.
It seems it's simple. There's a good mention in the chat from JJ that is Google turning into Microsoft, because it sure seems like it. So, all right. Well, one last story which I thought was really interesting. We don't talk about VR that often, but this is a nice kind of cross section. There was a AMA with the Meta CTO recently, and the question of the Google Play Store on the Quest came up. And basically what the Meta CTO said, I'll say, verbatim from the Instagram AMA that happened, Andrew Bosworth, the CTO, he said, there's nothing preventing Android developers who have an APK that's running on Android phones today to bring them to VR. They just have to ship the APK to us. They may have to do some light modification depending on how they want the control screen to work, but maybe not even necessarily much of that. He said, we don't have any way of automatically ingesting those. We would love for Google to bring their Play Store of apps to VR. We've asked them. They don't want to do it. So it's up to developers to do that. So what you've got here is you've got Meta asking Google to bring the Play Store to the Quest environment and open up Android apps to users who are using Quest and VR, and Google doesn't want to. So if any Android developers are out there want to be on Quest VR, they have to bring the APK directly to them. I just thought that was interesting that for, what does Google got to lose by not doing that? I guess, especially after they gave up on Daydream and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. It just seems kind of silly.
Well, I mean, we don't know whether or not Meta agreed or disagreed to the other terms that Google might have had for, if you want Google Play, you got to agree to these terms, you got to pay us this fee, you got to ship all these other apps. And, we do know Google did announce they're working with Samsung on an XR OS, and presumably that will have access to Google Play. So, we don't know exactly what was said behind the scenes between Meta and Google.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting coming out of AMA, looking into it, that Quest does support PWAs, progressive web apps, and so that's interesting to see how that's kind of evolving. I also don't know anybody who has a Quest. I don't know anybody who's using it, who's asking for this stuff. I'm sure they're out there, but yeah.
Actually, the Quest 3 has been blowing people's minds with how good its pass through is, and actually the resolution of the full color pass through, and I see a lot of really mind blowing clips from people on Twitter, formerly X. Sorry, the other way around. X, formerly Twitter.
Too funny.
About the Quest 3, and I'm really impressed by what they've done with it.
Cool. All right, maybe I'll have to check that out. So if you're using the Quest, email us in. You can email us at contact@androidfaithful.com. Let us know what your experience has been. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for apps. We're almost done with the show. We got a couple of emails, though, that we wanted to get to. And Wynn, you've got the first one?
Yeah, and the first one is from Jeff. Hey, Android Faithful crew. I'm loving your show. I started listening to the old show back in 2012. I'm so glad you've created this new show for those of us that still want to keep up with the latest in Android. The show is as good as it's ever been, and with even more enthusiasm.
Even more.
That's awesome. There's some enthusiasm for you. Very, very sincere. When it comes to Android hardware, I'm probably in the minority in that I buy my phones outright and I buy my service from one of those MVNOs. I won't pay more than $500 for a phone, and even that is kind of steep for me. I know for high-end phones, it's the year of the foldable/flippable, but how's the mid-range market shaping up? Is it growing or shrinking? What kind of choices do I have? What features are finally making their way into this range? What should I be looking out for in the coming year? I know you do discuss mid-range hardware as it's released, but I would love to hear any insights you might have about the segment as a whole and where it's heading. Thank you so much. And a shout out to Huyen It Now. Go Terps. Go Terps. And that's from Jeff, presumably a fellow Terp. Thanks, Jeff.
So I thought this question was great because Myriam, you're here, and we were talking about mid-range earlier. So if you were going to recommend a mid-range phone to Jeff, what would your choice be?
North America, Jeff, it's a no-brainer. Pixel 7a all day. I mean, it's affordable, and it's essentially a flagship. If you look at the spec, it is a flagship, just missing a telephoto, but then the Pixel 8 doesn't have a telephoto either. So, now it could be argued, the Pixel, stretch your budget, get a Pixel 8, but look, I have a soft spot for the 7a because the 7a is just so much more affordable. And I mean, if you want to be contrary, which I support 100%, buy this, which is the Moto Edge 2023.
I was going to ask you about Moto, what your thought are.
I just got this in. I haven't set it up yet. It's look, I think Moto, this is a beautiful phone. Leather, vegan leather, metal frame, curved glass, which is not my favorite, but some people love it because it's narrow in hand. It's a small phone, 6.6 inches relatively. The only thing that's iffy on this is a Mediatek 7030, which is a very much a mid-range chip. And the camera, of course, imaging is not Moto's forte. But honestly, this phone, for the money, it's $599 on sale for $499. That's it's got wireless charging. It has everything. So I think these are your candidates. Maybe OnePlus Nord N30 or 20. The previous one, the 20, I think is better value because it's slightly cheaper and you get an OLED display. It's only 60 hertz, but you still get an OLED. But that's kind of bringing you down more to the mid-range and not the kind of affordable flagship, which I think where these two phones are sitting. So I don't know. This is a North American view. I also have the Pocos and the Redmis and the Realmes and the, all the other ones here in my drawers. I could go dig one out and tell you what I think. But
Myriam, I want to get your take on a mid-range phone that I see a lot of blogs, stuff like that, are suggesting. Also, Nothing Phone 2. Would you suggest that?
Well, yeah. I mean, but it's more. It's
a little pricey.
More like
It's on the top.
OnePlus 11. It's a little like Pixel 8. This is so I knew 500 is his budget. I'm gonna respect that, right? Like we can all stretch a bit, but I think Pixel 7a is what, $499 all day long, more or less, and sometimes on sale, or soon to sometimes be on sale because Google. And this thing is currently on sale for $499. So even though it's $599, so I think look, there's always, again, if you want to save a bit of money, get that Nord N20 from a year ago. It's actually a really solid phone.
Yeah.
But it's not good. Doesn't have wireless charge. Doesn't have metal construction. It's like a step down. So
right. Oh, OnePlus and wireless charging. They keep. All right, cool. Well, Jeff, hopefully there's a suggestion for you. Email us back in. Let us know where you net out on, or what you choose if you're going to get a new mid-range phone. And our last email is a little interactive. So, Mishaal, Myriam, I want everybody to get your phones out and open up Chrome, and then I'll read the email. And then you'll know what we're going to do from there.
Right.
So, Brandon writes in and says, real quick, I heard the guy last episode who said he had 33 Chrome tabs open. At any given time, I have 75 to 100 tabs open. It's wild. I may not have a Pixel 3, but I have a 7. I'm constantly having my phone freak out, and that's when I know I need to close tabs. I wonder if anyone has more. So let's start with Win. How many tabs do you have open currently in Chrome?
I only have 23. I actually am I do good tab housekeeping these days, tab hygiene, and I actually just cleared out. Well, I actually just cleared out yesterday, so I've already back up to 23.
I don't know what the right answer is, a high number or a low number. But
I don't know either.
Myriam, how many tabs do you have open currently?
My Pixel, which is my main phone, 2.
Okay.
My OnePlus Open 1.
All right.
So, no, I clean up. I'm compulsive at cleaning up.
Okay.
I've always wanted to go for light and thin, especially on my laptops. And so I've learned to kind of I lived as my main travel computer with a MacBook 12-inch. You know the one?
Oh, yeah.
The Retina one with the underpowered Intel chips in it. Yeah. I lived with that as my main travel computer for a long time. So I learned to more than 5 tabs.
Right?
Yeah, more than 5 tabs. You don't run more than 3 apps, kind of thing. And so this is kind of how I live my life on my phones. I'm always closing apps. I'm always closing tabs. I'm terrible. Don't follow my example. Be cooler than me.
Mishaal, how many? What's your count at?
I have 5 open right now on the OnePlus Open. I do clean up with tabs a lot. I use tab groups, the built-in feature in Chrome, to create tab groups. Then also have an extension called OneTab. So I create a tab group of things I'm researching. Then I use OneTab to archive it. So whenever I want to go back and actually write something or post something on it, I just open that tab group back up. So I do have a lot of tabs. They're just not all open all the time.
Power user, Mishaal. You look at that. I have 14 tabs open currently at the moment. So
do I win or do I lose?
I don't know. I don't know. I've lost the thread. I don't know what the winner is. But well, email us. Let us know how many tabs you have open. Again, that's contact@androidfaithful.com. And that's going to wrap up our show. Myriam, thank you so much for joining us. That's fantastic. So great to have you.
Me.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, so thanks for bringing up my link tree. This is a good one. So the podcast is my main thing, mobiletechpodcast.com. If you want to subscribe there, please do. Then there is, a Patreon you can join as well right there. We get a video version of the podcast, which is a little earlier than the audio and has generally more content. Sometimes I have to cut stuff out to keep things in time. So check that out. If you want to support me, that's a great way to do it. There's a YouTube video channel, YouTube, have you heard of that thing? And it's got some videos in it, like hands-ons, unboxing, that kind of stuff. It's not very active, but if you want to read me on Hot Hardware, Geek Spin, Gear Diary. Mostly Hot Hardware. I do most of their major phone reviews. And then you probably want to read me about car stuff. And I should probably update this, but Tech Radar is really my main I cover car tech and EVs, and a lot of his opinion pieces. I do a kind of bi-weekly column there. I'm all about mobility, not just with the phones and the personal tech, but also with the vehicles out there. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. And people just, if they Google you, Google Tnkgrl,
and then
they'll
the
find
handle
it,
that
right?
you see on the screen here, Tnkgrl, is Tnkgrl, drop all the vowels. That's my Twitter X, Threads, Insta, Blue Sky, but I'm not on Mastodon. I know I've already been like panned for that today, but bear with me. One day I'll figure it out.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. It was so great to have you
Thanks
on.
for having me.
All right, Mishaal, where can folks find you?
You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm on Twitter, X, Mastodon, Reddit, Threads, Discord, Lemmy.
What's Lemmy?
Oh, my husband's on Lemmy.
Lemmy
I'm pretty much
from
everywhere at
Motorhead?
Mishaal Rahman. Same handle everywhere except for Threads, where there's Mishaal_Rahman. And if you want to support my work, I'm on Patreon at Mishaal Rahman. You can join my members-only Discord, where I talk a lot about what I'm working on, things that I found, and also some exclusive posts from time to time.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mishaal, as always. Appreciate it. Huyen, where can folks find you?
You can find me. I'm an Android dev, and I generally talk about Android dev stuff. You can find any talks that I've done accompanying code and video on my website, randomlytyping.com. And in places, I'm at Queen Code Monkey, except for the Fediverse, where I am at Queen Code Monkey at mastodon.social. And I also want to say for video viewers this week, you get an extra special bonus because I think Myriam, I kind of vibing on Myriam this week with the color tone with my lipstick and Myriam's glasses. I think like we're vibing.
My phone has a blue LED in it. I'm finding out that because I never really do podcasts at night, it's like lighting up my
look at that.
face.
Yeah, it's uplighting.
Weird.
Yeah.
It's a vibe. We're a vibe. So
The glasses match, and I love your lipstick and stuff.
yeah, so we're vibing this week. So anyway, as a
To me, it
as a
doesn't
video
match
viewer.
the pink though and the blue. I don't
No,
know.
it's good.
I
It's
don't
like
know what I was
contrast, like
thinking.
accents, just like popping. Anyway, so if you're a video viewer, you get those wonderful kind of like little visual extras, accoutrement.
And
that
you
get.
could you could find that. You can find the video on our website at androidfaithful.com or over on the Daily Tech News Show channel on YouTube. So that's
live.
where you can check it all out. So cool. And for me, I am RonXO across all the various socials. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, blah, blah, blah. I'm not very active. I need to be more active. Maybe I will be soon. We'll see. But I am most active on Instagram. And actually, I went the other night to see a band called Quicksand, and I took my Pixel 8 Pro, and there's a photo. I was, this is zoomed in probably at like 6x or so, but also took some really, really good quality video from being far away. I was very happy with the Pixel 8 Pro in a concert environment. I thought it did a good job to get my stuff up on Instagram stories, so you can find that at RonXO. You can see that there. It was a fun night out in New York City. So good times. That's going to wrap us up for the show. As the aforementioned AndroidFaithful.com, that is where you can find all of our links to subscribe to the show, or you can see our most recent episode. You can watch the video. It's all there. There's also a link to contact us where you can email us. There's a link to our Patreon. Everything you need there. It's your one-stop shop for all things Android Faithful. And of course, we want to thank everybody for watching, listening, supporting, just being awesome. We are here every Tuesday night. We're live on YouTube and on Twitch, and then we release the podcast Tuesday evenings after that. And we'll be here next week because we are the Android Faithful.